out what's the future of open ed look like? And with the amazing leadership of Spark and OpenStax, my organization, as well as the Colorado Department of Higher Education, as well as the University System of Maryland, we have just been really, really excited to work on making this a community-owned organization. And we have had just tremendous support from our steering committee and from tons and tons of community volunteers. So thank you all for your support. Thank you so much for being here. This has just been a tremendous journey. And as you all know, this has been a hard journey. The last 2 years have not been easy for any of us. And that's why I am so excited for you all to hear from Dr. Imad about trauma, about healing, about how to bring that information to your classrooms, and how we as folks working in education can really fill ourselves back up and heal and go out there and make a difference in the world. I first started reading some of the works that Dr. Imad put out in Inside Higher Ed. I then saw a bunch of her videos on YouTube, and I have been inspired since that first essay that I read. And I cannot wait for you all to hear from her in just a few minutes. But first, we're going to hear from some of our amazing steering committee members. So I'm going to pass it over to Emily Reagan, and she will do a little icebreaker kickoff for us.
Thanks, Daniel. And thanks, Aisha. Aisha's going to help share our slides here. So welcome to our Monday plenary. We're so glad to have you all here. And yes, what a journey this has been. So very quickly, if you could take a moment to set up Menti, and Aisha's going to give us a little more information about that. And then we're going to just kind of scan who's in the room. We have a few icebreaker questions, and then in just a few minutes, we'll get straight to our plenary session.
Hello, everyone. So we're going to start with setting up Menti. I went ahead and put a link in the chat that will directly take you to the Menti setup. We recommend using a different browser if you have a phone, an extra laptop, but you can also use whatever you're using right now. So there's option one is just to go straight to menti.com and type in the code on the screen, which is 37986784. Or you can do the second option, which is easier. You just go directly to the link I put into the chat and it'll take you there right away. You don't have to worry about entering anything. And then the last option is to scan the QR code on the screen. So I'm going to give everyone just a few seconds to get that up. Post the link again, just in case we have any late arrivers. And yes, with that, we can go ahead and start with our first question. So I want to start off with a fun question. How does everybody feel about a week of virtual conferencing? I am definitely somewhere in between giddy and tight schedule. I'm seeing a lot of multitasking. I love that. Wow, multitasking is winning right now.
Yeah, by a long shot.
Only 2 party animals? I guess it's too early for most people. Yes, multitasking. I just like the penguin. That's funny. That is how I feel when I'm waking up and walking to my desk. Yes, Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. That one, I love that one. And if you're on the Discord channel too, which please join if you're not, you will feel like Zoom, Discord, bouncing between all of them. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead to the, Kim, all of the choices, I agree. I'm gonna go ahead to the next question, which Emily is gonna do.
Yes, let's see if we can break Menti, because I've enjoyed seeing these come in through the chat, but where are you joining from? And we have people from all over the world. And in fact, we'll show you on the map here in just a second. But this is beautiful. All of these locations. We're seeing Michigan and Texas and Maryland and Oregon, especially well represented, Massachusetts. But so many wonderful locations. Thank you everyone for joining us. Yes, Egypt. Oh my goodness. I know they're getting small, they're hard to read. Oakland and Oklahoma City, Louisiana in the chat. So this is really beautiful. I'm impressed. Alaska, we've got good representation from Alaska. Exciting. And Amsterdam. Okay, well, I know we have so many places. In fact, I'm excited to show you the map. So Aisha, why don't we move forward? Well, for one thing, there's a lot of us. So we have 1,747 participants and counting. So this is a fantastic representation of our community. And if we look at where we're at, just looking in the northern part of North America, we have all 50 states represented, and the most heavily represented, most heavily populated provinces in Canada are also all represented. And then if we look at the global map, look at that. We have fantastic representation across the whole globe. I am truly excited. Yeah, this is amazing.
Jumping into our next question, and if you're on Menti, make sure you click go to current slide so you're not answering for the last question. But what is your primary profession? I see people are already answering this, so librarians are winning by a long shot. Yes, I love to see the few students we have. Welcome.
Yes, and also our teacher educators and our instructional designers, such important players. We're all working together to make open work for our students.
Yes, I love these. And for those who clicked other, please go ahead and share in the Zoom chat what you do. I'm going to put the Menti link into the chat again, just for anyone who might have just joined so they can participate.
Fantastic.
Okay, moving on to the next question. How many times have you attended the Open Ed conference? Oh, wow. So a lot of first-time attendees.
That's fantastic. Look at that.
Wow. One person 10 plus times. That's crazy. A big shout out to whoever you are. So I'm also a first timer. This is my first conference ever, first open event ever. So
we're setting a high bar, Aisha.
so if you're a first time attendee, this could be you next year. Wow, I love to see that there's a lot of first time attendees. And I love these comments you all are leaving right here. So welcome to all our first timers and welcome to returning. We appreciate every one of you. We can hop on over to our next question, which is how would you rate your level of experience in the open education field? I openly admit that I am very, very beginner. Just joined in March, kind of the open community. So went from being a student advocate to helping Spark. So
got a bell curve. It's kind of fun how we're distributing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a wonderful thing about this conference. There's a place for everyone, no matter our experience level with open. This is the right place to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that. Okay, we can go on to our next question.
Okay, we're going to move into a couple more open-ended questions. So what motivates your interest in open education? You can type a little bit and then submit. Equity, access. Oh, so much equity. The students, student support, equitable access for all, access and equity. So we've got some real themes. If this was a word cloud, we'd have huge equity, access, students. And that's actually exactly what I would put too if I was entering, entering responses here. Let's see if we get scrolling. We've got. There we go. And more equity. Oh, engagement. Yes, we want our students engaged. Sharing. Saving students money. And student success, student retention, student learning, community. And that's what's fun about Open Ed conference. We really get a chance to be in the community. Hopefully you've gotten on Discord as well. I love how sharing is coming up. It's so helpful to be able to create instructional materials and then share them and iterate them so that they work in our classrooms. Ethics, student access.
Definitely winning.
Accessibility, decolonization, dissemination.
I love that one.
It's gonna be really fun to look back at these answers and tally up just how many times we have equity and access, social justice, helping people.
Yeah,
Affordability.
it fits perfectly for the making open for all topic that we have.
Absolutely, the theme of our conference this year. Role of open and social justice work. More with accessibility and access, copyright reform, improving access to education. We want education for all. We want higher education for all. Freedom, along with affordability. And fairness, yes, equity, fairness. Okay, I think we're ready for our final question. So what do you hope to get out of this conference? We're on the forming edge of 5 amazing days. What are some of your hopes? Community, new ideas, new connections, lots with ideas, knowledge, resources, friends, to learn new things, knowledge, tools. That's right, we're gonna get so many ideas, so many good tips, so many suggestions for resources. We're going to meet new people, reconnect with people perhaps we've met in previous years if we're one of the returning members. Ideas for Open Access Week. Inspiration, yes. Keeping ourselves going, right? We need the energy to keep at this work. More with new ideas. More knowledge, more connections, cutting the cost of student textbooks. Feeling inspired with our new ideas, our new friends, new resources. Yes, re-energized, rejuvenated. Ideas on expanding a new OER program, learning how to engage faculty, networking and new knowledge, collaboration. Yes, this work only works because we're doing it all together. Ready to learn aside others, networking and knowledge, meeting others active in this space. Brains, renewed energy, networking, new ideas. I love it, the inspiration. Well, thank you all for sharing with us some of your hopes for the conference, some of what motivates you for this work. And this is just exactly what we wanted to see this morning. So thank you for sharing all of these, including our interest in practical ideas for implementing OER. I love this. Open Ed helps refill my soul and keep me doing this often thankless work for another year. We don't always hear the thanks, and it's important to be reminded how impactful this work is. So thank you so much. So we're going to, you can keep putting your ideas in here. We can keep recording them later, but just one more shout out, use the hashtag OpenEd21 or @HeyOpenEd when you're on social media. And we're gonna turn it back over to Daniel so we can actually get into our plenary session.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Emily. Thanks so much, Aisha. Well, y'all, I have the great privilege, I was going to say some other word, but privilege was what I meant to say. So I have the great privilege to welcome Dr. Imad to speak with us today. Dr. Imad received her undergraduate training from the University of Michigan at Dearborn, where she studied philosophy. She then received her doctoral degree in cellular and clinical neurobiology from Wayne State University, School of Medicine in Detroit. She then completed a National Institute of Health funded postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Arizona in the Department of Neuroscience. She joined the Department of Life and Physical Sciences at Pima Community College in Tucson, Arizona as an adjunct faculty member in 2009, and then later as a full-time faculty member in 2013. During her tenure at Pima, she taught physiology, pathophysiology, genetics, biotechnology, and biomedical ethics. She also founded Pima's Teaching and Learning Center. Wow, that's a lot already. But she's also a Gardner Institute Fellow and an AAC&U Senior Fellow with the Office of Undergraduate STEM Education. Dr. Imad's research focuses on stress, self-awareness, advocacy, and classroom community, and how these impact student learning and success. And I know we've all had probably a fairly stressful year, and this is going to be an amazing talk. So her work focuses on looking at ways that her teaching and her research can really seek to provide students with transformative opportunities that are grounded in the aesthetics of learning, truth-seeking, justice, and self-realization. She is a nationally recognized expert on trauma-informed teaching and learning, and she passionately advocates for institutions to make mental health a top priority and to systematically support the education of the whole student. I am so excited for you all to hear from Dr. Imad. And with that, I will stop talking and turn it over to her. Thank you so much, Dr. Imad.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for this kind introduction, for your invitation. I want to thank the open education community. I want to thank all of you for joining me, and I want to pay a special gratitude for having friends and mentors and colleagues here with us today, people whose work I have learned from a great deal and who have been an inspiration for me. So as I was preparing for this presentation, I wanted to dig deeper into the word open and to look at the translation, the origin, the philosophical or linguistic element of the word open. And I kept going back to the language that is my first language, the one that I'm familiar with, Arabic. And in the Arabic language, the word open is a fascinating one. It actually means to begin and to open. And it goes directly to the heart, an opening in the heart. And so what I want to invite you today is to listen and to process and to interrogate and problematize and internalize, not just with your intellect, but also your heart. And my hope is to consider, what does it mean to become radical openers, where the education for all is the first step, that in this opening we are also able to enact transformative change, where those whose narratives are traditionally overshadowed are central to the story of us moving forward. So with that, I'm going to share my slides with you. I want to say a couple of things. My contact information is listed below. I am also going to invite you to use the chat to share and comment and enrich this experience. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add the number of chats at the end, and I'm going to match a portion of that and actually donate it to your favorite international charity, favorite international or national charity. So we're going to vote on that at the end. I'm going to ask you to vote on your favorite charity. So what I would like to do today, I would like to reflect back on the previous year and consider how we can move forward and support our students, support our colleagues, and also support ourselves. And what I'm going to begin with, asking you a couple of questions on, we're going to go back to Menti and consider that we've been in this uncharted territory and consider the moment right now. And so I've asked my colleagues to put into the chat how to access the Menti. You could either click on this link or put menti.com and go to this, enter this code. So just really quickly, I'm going to switch us to Menti and then we'll come back here. So in the first question, I am inviting you to consider recently how you've been feeling. And in particular, there's been a lot written about feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. And I want us to consider this. How have you been feeling recently? I do this exercise because I want to be intentional to allocate time for well-being. I want to know how the community is doing. I want us to know how the community is doing as well. And what I could see from this is that those who have had a chance to participate in this poll overwhelmingly are feeling overwhelmed, right? And the nature of feeling overwhelmed is, it is how I feel. Yes, it's subjective, but how I feel, regardless whether the situation warrants me to feel overwhelmed or not, it doesn't matter. It's how I feel. And the feeling of this exhaustion and overwhelm then impacts the rest of my well-being. And so I want us to sit with that. Many of us are caring for family members, caring for students, working and caring for colleagues. We are in the care system, right? Many of us are frontline with the students, and we are feeling this sense of exhaustion or overwhelm. And one of the questions that I keep coming back to is, what can we do to sustain the work that we are doing, to honor, to do justice by our hearts, to honor ourselves, to attend to our own well-being while at the same time caring for others? So I'm going to go to the next question, and the next question is similar to this. Let us dig deeper. Part of the etymology of opening is it's a continuous process. We don't just open and rest. It is an ongoing. And the more we open, the deeper we go. And so let us go deeper. Let us look into what is it that you're struggling with the most these days that's making you feel overwhelmed. Deadlines, balance, connectedness, exhaustion, parenting, work-life balance, isolation, graduate school, workload, lack of control, uncertainty. And I'm also reading the chat, and I see that some of you are writing, I'm not feeling alone. I'm gonna talk about that. It's an important, as you read your colleagues' comments. Balance, workload, motivation, uncertainty, isolation, exhaustion. So if we were in a classroom together and we were talking about the stress response, what I would say, I would look at you and I would say, congratulations, your nervous system is working. Considering the circumstances we're in, we're supposed to be feeling this way. And I'm going to talk about the brain, and I'm going to talk about why the brain is feeling this sense of fogginess, uncertainty, lack of motivation, and so on. So I want to thank you for participating in this, Menti. We will come back at that very end to vote on your favorite charity. And right now, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. So over the summer, I ran a session, and I asked, and a session that there were over 2,000 participants in the session, educators from around the world. And I asked the question, what's bothering you most? Similar to what I did with you right now. And I took their answers, I put them in a word cloud, and this is what came back, right? So this is a year ago, almost, actually, not a year, over a year ago, summer of 2020, and this is where we are right now. I want to share with you one more reason why I do this exercise, and I want to introduce the work of American poet and feminist Adrienne Rich to explain my reason. So in this excerpt, she writes, when those who have the power to name and socially construct reality choose not to see you or hear you. When someone with the authority of a teacher, say, describes the world and you are not in it, there is a moment of psychic disequilibrium, as if you looked in the mirror and saw nothing. It takes some strength of soul, and not just individual strength, but collective understanding to resist this voice, this non-being into which you are thrust, and to stand up, demanding to be seen and heard. I do this exercise How are you doing? Are you feeling overwhelmed? What are you struggling with most? Because when we are under the influence of strong negative emotions, the brain tends to just cave in and focuses on those strong negative emotions. It ruminates. And the result of that oftentimes is that we feel we're the only one. And there is shame and there is guilt and there is isolation. It is very lonely to be in that state. I can't tell you how many times as a student, as a faculty member, as a human being, I've been in this situation where I go to school or I go to work and I feel like I am the only one experiencing the pain and the exhaustion because I look around and there is business as usual. Not that someone was shot yesterday or a war is happening or a refugee crisis or. And so this exercise I do is to help you, to really help empower you that you're not alone. You're feeling overwhelmed. The community is feeling overwhelmed. And I'm going to talk about what are some of the things we could do about it. So what is it that's making the brain feel overwhelmed? Our brains evolved to connect. We are social creatures. In fact, the brain is referred to by neuroscientists. Some neuroscientists refer to the brain as a social organ. We influence each other. We're influenced by others. We make meaning when we connect, when we integrate. We've had ingredients in the past year and a half that prevents those connections and integrations. If you go to the literature and you research what is it that's making people feel so overwhelmed, globally, there are 4 factors that emerge. Physiology. We're not meant to sit in front of the computer for an extended period of time and just work, work, work. There's so much research that highlights the benefits of being outside. So we had to pivot and that impact our physiology. The movement, the lack of the movement impacts not just the muscular system, but the cardiovascular system, the digestive system, our immune system. We also had an ongoing isolation that a lot of you wrote about in the Mentee. And this ongoing isolation, what it does, it is really stressful on the brain. We're not meant to be this isolated. If you look at a cellular level and you'll zoom in on one cell, one neuron, and you take away that neuron's nutrition, so it or signals, and it can't communicate with nearby cells, that cell, when it stops communicating, it will die. It will die to conserve energy. So we're not meant to be in isolation for an extended period of time. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, we need people. So the brain is trying to make sense of what is going on. Now, our peers, our surroundings, reinforce our sense of the world. They help us with this meaning making. So the isolation contributed to this existential struggle. What does this mean? Does anything mean anything? We've had goals interrupted, our purpose in life. A lot of people are saying, I don't know what I'm doing. Right? A lot of people say, oh, the people who are quitting right now, this resignation phenomena that's happening, people are tired, people are entitled, they want more, they want this, and so on. And there's also questioning of purpose. Does anything matter? And then the uncertainty is remarkable. The brain seeks information so it could make sense of the world. We need to be in control or have the sense that we are in control. And the information keeps changing. There is an information overload. And we can't come up with predictions. And so the uncertainty, extended uncertainty, combined with the isolation, combined with the struggle to physiology and loss of meaning, they are putting an enormous stress on the brain. This is not it. We also have a crisis of supremacy, where human beings think that they're better than others or better than other species. And we see this globally. And I often pause and wonder, what is it that is driving people to feel that way or to think that way? And that leads to, we have racism. We're not a post-racial society or world. We have poverty in our artificial intelligence world, in our, this global, that we have poverty that causes people to die. And you might be impacted by this firsthand, or you might be aware of it, and it wears heavy on our heart. What can we do? It is breaking our hearts. We have erasure, people's histories, people's knowledge, communities' is resilience are taken out of history and textbook. And we have mass incarceration. Young people are put in prison because they grew up in a system that cornered them, forced them to make choices that ended them in the prison. We have mass shooting. We have still colonialism, imperialism. We have never-ending wars that impacts people, and we pacify this by using euphemism or soft language like collateral damage, but those are people, animals, the planet, the trees, pictures on the wall, impacted. And we have the climate crisis, and we watch and we say, oh, this is really bad. And we, talk and we feel this overwhelming sense of we have no say or no power. We have a sense of loss of agency. And that is leading many people to the state of apathy. So yes, there is trauma. And it's not just the personal trauma. We have collective trauma that we're dealing with. In the next slide, I'm going to share this beautiful segment from a teacher about trauma, intergenerational trauma. And it is Dr. Bayo Akumalafe, who is a philosopher and a teacher and just a healer from West Africa. And let us see what he says. And I apologize, I did not share my sound, so I'll do that right now.
It's almost as if trauma is much more than just my experience. This is the reason why some Black activists and professors in decolonial traditions respond when people say, oh, forget about slavery. It happened 400 years ago. I mean, you're hung up on something that happened 400 years ago. No, because 400 years ago is still quite present. Because trauma is not just my experience, because I might be living in a traumatic space that is part of a volatilome of feelings and emotions, because I'm still partaking in feelings that may not be mine as such, because trauma is not a private affair, it's a public event. So trauma now seems to be molecular transgressions, microbiomes, atmospheric territories, material swirls of gas, geological events. Urban planning could also be thought of as part of this assemblage that we may now speak of as trauma. Political discourses cannot be ruled out. All of these might be thought of as trauma.
So we have reasons to feel overwhelmed, to feel disenchanted, to have this existential struggle. It is tempting to despair. And yet what I know about the brain and the little that I know about the heart and what I know about the human spirit and what I know about my own trauma and the healing that I've been able to and still work on, I am here to say that there is also another narrative, one about collective healing, about the community, about what Desmond Tutu, the Archbishop Desmond Tutu says, I learned to be a human through other human beings. I learned to heal my own trauma from being in the classroom, from working with my colleagues. Desmond Tutu also says, we have hardships without becoming hard. We have heartbreak without being broken. So we do have a choice. We could choose to do nothing, remain passive, ambivalent, romanticize hopelessness, ruminate on what we cannot do. That's fair. That's an option. We have another option. This other option is more dynamic, that we do something. And we do something by going back to the previous normal, repeating what we've been doing. That's an option. Or we forge a new way. In this radical opening, in this continuous radical opening, I want us to consider and envision and enact and dream of this forging a new way. And this forging a new way cannot be done alone. This is not an I or you journey. This is an us journey. So we heal through relationships. And it's not just relationships of me and you. It is an interdependent relationships with the earth and all of its inhabitants. It's a relationship I have with you, and it's a relationship that I know it is there with the people in Yemen whose stories have been forgotten, where the foreign policy in this country impacts and other countries. Right? It's this awareness that we are intimately interconnected, interdependent. That if there is justice or inhumanity somewhere, it will be everywhere. Trauma shatters our assumptions about the benevolence of the world, about the meaningfulness of the world, our sense of self and sense of self-worth. So trauma is very much relational. There is a heartbreak. You turn on the news and you see another shooting, or you see people getting evicted, or you see, and it breaks your heart because we're empathic. Those are our siblings somewhere, right? And you feel this, can I do anything? What can I do? Well, the trauma is relational and the healing is relational. We're not going to fix this, right? We're not going to fix this, but we can start. We can make a commitment to this radical opening. We can interrogate and problematize and dream and dare to say, no, I am done with this status quo. It is not beautiful. I am committed to something that I aspire more for humanity. I'm going to look for that, and we're going to work on it together. And we can start small. We can start with the heart, with ourselves, and work with our small niche, our students, our colleagues. So this trauma-informed care, this is not something new that started when the pandemic started. Other sectors were using it. Other communities were using it. Maybe they didn't give it the language that is there. And what I have for you are just some suggestions, some recommendations that I have been sitting with and just really trying to embody and understand and dissect. What does it mean to welcome my students and my colleagues and the people that I interact with, having this lens, this trauma lens, and being prepared? So I have a few suggestions for you. Number one, learn about trauma, including intergenerational trauma. Learn about it and notice. The more you learn, the more you will have moments of self-assurance and reassurance. The more you will learn about your own journey. An example, look up The Wisdom of Trauma by Gabor Mate. It's a documentary and it's a series of interviews. It's a beautiful documentary. So, number two, resist pathologizing or trying to fix. Many of us are not therapists, we're not counselors. We're not treating people who are experiencing psychological trauma, this individual and collective. There's nothing wrong with them. Something happened to them. Something happened to their communities and their families. We don't need to fix them, right? Number three, get to know people instead of making assumptions or categorizing them. I don't want someone to put me into a box or say I am like the rest, or I am. So people, remember, trauma is relational, the healing is relational. So spend time getting to know people. What do you think? Like, pause and let people know that you are being intentional to get to know them. It matters because when we make assumption about someone, when we microaggress against someone, it activates the stress response. It sends messages which are powerful. Does the person not care to get to know me? Let people know intentionally, deliberately, that There is an us journey. They're part of a community. They matter. You want them there. This is whether you are in a classroom or in a instructional designer or in a teaching and learning center or in the library. Let people know they matter. We assume that our students know that we know they matter. Let us not assume. Let us be explicit about that and repeat that message. Number 5, when we are in a state of persistent uncertainty, when we feel the sense of loss of agency, it can be really overwhelming. It can be really lonely. So when people say, I don't know what's going on with me, I was interviewing a student the other day, and the student said, it's like I lost my motivation. And it reminded me of the many times where I thought, did I lose my intelligence? Did I lose my cognitive ability? Did I lose my, right? But I was under the influence of, again, the toxic stress, right? And so knowledge can be healing. We want to let people know that if you're experiencing this, it's not because you're not motivated or you're lazy, you're not hardworking, you're not intelligent, you're not brilliant. Your body is coping. And so knowledge can be healing, it's empowering. And then we need to be intentional to allow people to voice, to give their choice, right? Rather than waiting for something, a crisis to happen, and we're going to have mental health initiatives and so on, we need to preemptively prioritize it. Now more than ever. When else are we going to have a global pandemic, right? Political divisiveness, there's climate crisis, there's racism, etc., etc. That is wearing heavy on us. So let us preemptively prioritize mental health care. Contextualize, culturally in tuned mental health care. How can we facilitate meaning making? And what I mean by this is, again, we're not going to fix this massive thing. What we can do is work within our domain. So with the students, I say to them, why are we doing this? What does it mean in the grand scheme of things? How does it relate to the community? How does it, right? We could help people reconnect with meaning or establish meaning. Number 8. All of these are antidotes to those 4 and the other factors that I shared. What can we do in an intentional fashion to bring people together, foster a sense of community? So all I say when I teach again and again and again is, this is an us journey. I'm trying to shift a culture, one of competitive and rigor and this and that, to it's an us journey. If someone is missing, it is not the same. I had a student say that they weren't going to be able to make it. And I said, oh, it's not going to be the same. Student showed up. And I didn't put pressure. I didn't say, oh, you're great or this or that. But I genuinely was like, oh, one of the communities not going to be there. Is that? What does it mean to bear witness to people's struggle and also their strength? A lot of times, and that's why I started with that exercise, when we are feeling I'm procrastinating, or I have lack of motivation, we feel shame, we internalize it, we feel deficits, all kinds of deficits, right? And that is very lonely. And so when someone says to me, of course you're feeling this way, when they recognize the truth in my experience and they advocate for it, of course you're feeling this way. It can be healing profoundly. And also their strength and their brilliance. When we recognize the truth, we pause, we advocate for it. And then the 10th invitation or suggestion is, how can we advocate for transformative change? I want an open education where, in addition to everyone having access to education, I want that education to be transformative, where students, where people engage with the material and they think there is hope. Not toxic positive. There is hope. There is resistive hope. There is a better narrative. I want to realize, I want to be part of that journey to get to that narrative, right? I want an open education where people read and access that and say, we aspire better for humanity. Are we gonna investigate how to get there? So, enacting politics of radical opening. Ask new and daring and audacious questions, not status quo. Whose narrative is being overshadowed in this moving forward? That is critical. And I want to end with a poem by the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish. He says, think of others. And he says, as you prepare your breakfast, think of others. Don't forget to feed the pigeons. As you conduct your wars, think of others. Don't forget those who want peace. As you pay your water bill, think of others. Think of those who have only the clouds to drink from. As you go home, your own home, think of others. Don't forget those who live in tents. As you sleep and count the stars, think of others. There are people who have no place to sleep. As you liberate yourself with metaphors, think of others. Those who have lost their right to speak. And as you think of distant others, think of yourself and say, I wish I were a candle in the darkness. May you continue to be that candle for your fellow human beings, for your students, for your colleagues. You illuminating their path will give back to you. How sweet it is when you see someone and you see in their eyes that you saw them, that they see that you see them, and how sweet it is to witness their humanity just shine and overflow. So I want to thank you for joining me, for honoring your colleagues and your participation. We're going to have time for questions and answers. But first, let's go to the mentee and do one more poll. So, as promised, right now, I would like you to vote on, if you would, what's your favorite charity? So we're gonna, at the end of this, I'm going to donate. I'm gonna look at the chat, I'm gonna process the chat, and I'm going to donate to that charity. And then you'll get an email with the when I donate and how much, and so. And there are there's some of you who are putting your vote into the chat. I'm going to take that also into and tally that, so that will be part of it. Let's see if we can get to 200, and then we will stop and I'll take questions. Oh, numbers are going up. Amazing. Awesome. Great. Doctors Without Borders. Looks like that's winning. So I'll do another 45 seconds, and then we will stop to have a discussion and take questions if there are any. So another 30 seconds. All right. How grateful I am for all of you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Imad, that was absolutely incredible. It's incredibly telling that so many folks were expressing hopelessness and hurt in the comments. And I'm so grateful that everyone shared this. This is a hard and scary and hurtful experience that I think a lot of us have been through. But I think we have to find healing in the solidarity and in our community. And I also want to acknowledge a comment that I saw in the chat. There's a really challenging balance between acknowledging the state of things and also making room for healing can require discussing things that can be triggering for many. And so, as the conference, we'll definitely be mindful about putting some trigger warnings on future presentations. But I also thought it valuable to discuss that with you, Dr. Imad, if you could weigh in on kind of the navigating the tensions there of kind of discussing things that can be challenging, but also acknowledging that there are challenging things that we face.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. So I want to first apologize if any of my words wounded you. So, I often, sometimes on a daily basis, I find myself triggered. And usually when it comes to war and imperialism, and usually it's been my experience that in the discussions and initiatives about justice and equity, the stories of those who are on the other side are not part of that. And part of that is the human nature. We tend to focus on the here and now. But for immigrants and refugees, for me, often makes me wonder, do people there not matter? Right? Of course they do. So I would get triggered, and the trigger is because, I tell my students, so I have a statement on trigger and why do we get triggered? What's happening to us internally? What's going on with our physiology? Knowledge is power. Knowledge can be healing. And so I want to give them that. And so, I say it's reminding us of something that happened to us or something that matters to us. It is reopening wounds that may be never healed. It is, I explain. And then I offer suggestions. What can you do with it? What can you do? You could use it to learn about the situation. What is it in me that is feeling wounded right now? Maybe I didn't know about it and I need to work on it, right? So you could use this discomfort as an opportunity to grow, or if you're not ready, walk away. There are more opportunities to grow. So there are times where I sit in the discomfort and I say, what is it? What's triggering me? What is it, right? To sit in it and to learn. And there are times where I walk away and say, this is not worth my health. So when I teach and I'm going to present a case study that is going to involve really powerful images and information, it is the kind thing to do to let people know these are the topics we're going to talk. And if you feel this way, like I said, I prepare my students. So I hope does that answer your question? Daniel? And I would love to read in the chat if others, how they handle this.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely hit on the important points. And I think we as the organizing committee probably could have done a better job preparing people. So I think that's a lesson learned. But I will say that, if you have any questions, please throw them into the chat or into the QA. I'll read a couple of comments while I'm waiting for the questions because I think they're really great. Jennifer Snook Brown wrote, Dr. Imad, this plenary was the mental health acknowledgement and exploration that I know that I feel deeply that I needed a reminder of. And I know that that's exactly what I've been feeling too, this sense of community, knowing that I'm not broken, that kind of some of the lack of motivation that perhaps I was feeling is not because I've lost my mental faculties or whatever it is. That type of acknowledgement was really, really, really helpful for me. And I see that reflected in a lot of the comments in the chat as well.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
And I should say, you don't need an expert. You don't need I have found healing and this elevating of my humanity at the bus stops, in the classroom, in hallways, far more than at the office of a professional practitioner who was working with me. That is not to say that that's not helpful, and I am very grateful for that. But the power of connection, genuine, deliberate, I see you and you matter, and I am bearing witness. I witness your magnificence, your pain and your brilliance and your belonging, you know, is enormously uplifting and healing.
Yeah, that is beautiful. A question did just come in, which is, what words of advice do you have for those of us who are managers, particularly middle managers, getting pushed from above, but wanting to care for our teams?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example from the classroom. So I have a structure in the classroom. I have a schedule. I have assessment, and I have a lot of flexibility. And then I tell the students, so when we're here, we can afford these flexibilities, but I am part of a system and I answer to the system. And while I'm trying to advocate for a more humane way of assessing students, actually a more effective way, more evidence-based way of assessing students' learning, we're not there yet. So I have to turn in grades and there are deadlines. So what that does, I hope it communicates to the students that I'm working with you. I've got your back. And then when I have to meet those deadlines is because, you know, there is a structure within which we're operating. So for your question specifically, have conversation with people. You know, so many times, I remember so many times things didn't go the way I expected at work. And my supervisor, with just an open heart, I could feel the passion, said to me, I'm sorry, we tried. And that was healing because she saw me. So have conversation with your team. Let them know you see them, they matter. Let them know that you have their back, you're protective of them, and you're part of a system that has deadlines and expectations and so on.
That's excellent. Previously, you shared with me that you had a community that you were a part of during the pandemic of your peers. And I'm wondering how our community here, the many people that are here attending the Open Ed conference, although we might not be physically present together, how we might also kind of emulate some of the community that you shared previously with me.
Yeah, so I love the exercise you did in the beginning, getting to know people who's there. So it was playful, it was lighthearted, there was curiosity. And so I think organizing things like that, but would allow for more intimate coming together without expecting or just don't be assuming. So in the community, we held, initially we held every Friday, we would meet on Zoom. And then sometimes it's every other Friday. But if I didn't show up, they didn't feel like, where is she? Or they checked on me. And so there wasn't that pressure. But we came, and sometimes if I am walking, I dial in. And it's just, sometimes it's this coming together with other people who will say, yeah, I'm having a hard time too. I don't know why. I just don't feel like it's taking me forever to reply to an email. Or those aha moments can send messages to the brain that we're not alone. You know, it's all about that we're not alone. And in the process, they give us aspects of hope. And so, you know, stories and imaginations are very healing. They activate different parts of the brain. So, perhaps do something where you have like 15-minute storytelling, or some kind of a creative project, an art project that you work on it together with different people from around the world, and then you showcase that. You celebrate the coming together of people. It doesn't always have to be sitting and talking about trauma, right? Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Imad, thank you so much. I can tell from the chat that I guess we will get you a copy of, so that you can tally the number of the chats. But it was just fantastic, and definitely the message that we all have to think about, reflect on, and we definitely needed this morning. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being here with us at Open Ed. And I am gonna turn it over to our strategic planning committee, who have a small announcement before we wrap up this session. Thank you so much, Dr. Imad.
Thank you, everyone.
So I will turn it over to Nadia.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everyone. So we have a very exciting announcement to make today. The Strategic Planning Committee is excited to share the final version of the strategic vision of the conference. This strategic vision is meant to be a guiding document that will help conference leadership make decisions about the future of the conference. This draft was actually opened for public consultation in mid-August and received a significant amount of thoughtful engagement from members via different means, like hypothesis, Google Docs, and different listening sessions. You can read more about the consultation process in the blog of Open Ed Conference website. We intend for it to be revisited periodically and hope to see it to grow alongside the conference. So thank you so much to everyone who participated, shared feedback, and helped us make the document a stronger reflection of our vibrant Open Ed conference community. This has been a constant enrichment. The final version of the strategic vision is available on the Open Ed conference website. And since we want this whole process to be transparent, an annotated version is available also. And this annotated version outlines the changes made and their rationale. And now I will hand it over to Ethan.
Thanks, Nadia. And Haley will post a link in the chat to that document, as well as a few other things. As Dr. Imad said, we can go back to the way we did things before, or we can forge a new way. And if we do, it can only be together. When this process started 2 years ago, we sort of, as the steering committee, were explicit that our goal was to build a community-led, community-owned conference. And the strategic planning committee, with input from members across the community, has been working to lay the groundwork to do just that. So this document is a big piece of that. Next is to actually determine a process for transitioning to a new organizational structure that will see this conference through 2022 and hopefully for many years after. So the announcement that we'd like to make is to invite you to join us at Friday's plenary session, which is at 12 p.m. Eastern, for an interactive discussion about what comes next for Open Ed, what this transition might look like. During that time, we'll talk, listen, discuss this transition, including how to design a process for identifying community members who can lead the conference through 2022 and beyond. So thank you all so much and looking forward to chatting more on Friday. And I'll give it back to Daniel to wrap us up.
All right, well, thanks so much, Ethan. Thank you all for joining us for our first plenary session. I hope you have a fantastic Open Ed conference. I hope I see you on Discord. people just threw links to Discord again into the chat. So if you haven't joined there, it's kind of like our virtual waiting room. It's a place where you can connect with people and sort of act like you're in the hallways of a physical space and chat. So I encourage you to jump on there. And I will go ahead and wrap up this session. Have a excellent Monday. Have a great rest of your first day of Open Ed 21. Adios. Bye-bye.